That's it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Good evening and welcome to the April
Okay.
22nd special meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. Apologies for a little bit of a late start here. We were just trying to get all of the folks in the virtual room at the right time. Madam Clerk, may I get you to start by calling a roll, please?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. Mayor Smith,
Here.
Mr. Abrams,
Here.
Mr. Andrasco, I know is going to be a little bit late today. Mr. Constant,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Casimis,
Here.
Ms. Yang.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We have 6.
Thank you very much. We are actually going to start this evening by asking the BET members to move into a brief executive session to address any personnel issues that require confidential conversation. May I please ask us all to move over at this point in time to that session?
Mr. Andrasco? Mr. Andrasco? Hi, if you're there, the other board members are in executive session. There's another link that was sent earlier.
All right, I'm back on, Marcia.
Yes, I see you.
All right, then I am going to mute and then go to the executive.
Okay. Yep.
Once I change my name, which I'm very diligent about telling everybody.
We will give it a moment as people rejoin the main session here. Thank you for your patience. We are just waiting for Mr. Andrasco, I believe, to rejoin. We'll just give Mr. Andrasco one more moment.
There he goes. He's here.
All right, there we go. We are back. Let the record show that there were no motions or votes taken during our executive session. To those of you who were waiting for us, thank you very much for your patience. As we now move into the core of our meeting, which will focus on the FY27 operating budget. Before we move that item for discussion, Madam Mayor, I will turn it to you for remarks, please.
Thank you so much, Chair Abrams. And thank you to every member of the BET for all of your efforts on this budget. Thank you very much to the chiefs for working diligently with their departments to find any savings that they could. And we all took this very seriously. A very big thank you to Jared and his team for all of your efforts. You've had many late nights running every scenario, finding savings wherever possible within all of the departments in City Hall. As a reminder, the key drivers behind this budget are the skyrocketing healthcare costs, something that we have had no control over, the 6 union contracts that were negotiated at the same time, and of course, the revaluation phase-in. Last week during our BET meeting, we presented my updated budget, and tonight we will deliberate and vote on that budget. And I'm just going to go over the reductions that are included in this revised budget. Minor restructuring and not filling some vacant positions. We're working with actuaries to change some assumptions in the pension valuation, and this is going to account for some of the over $3 million reduction. We're also going to fund the pension ADEC at 100%. We are adjusting the net tax levy decrease. We're creating policies around conferences and travel, food, and even office supplies in City Hall, which we feel are necessary, but will also find savings. We're implementing a motor vehicle mill rate increase, and there will be an increase in the park and recreation fees. I can confidently say that we have done everything we can to reduce spending and make the most of every penny in this budget without risking public safety or cutting back on services for our residents, which is very important. As it currently stands, I'm proposing the city budget be under 8% with an overall increase of about 6.3%. And Jared's going to go through some of those details. We are going to continue to look for savings throughout the year. This isn't a one-time practice. This is something that will continue, that I will continue to look at, we'll continue to look at together and review as a team. I am also going to reemphasize that I personally will support the 4.9% proposed for the Board of Education. This money will keep the services they currently have in place, continue to support our students and staff, and hopefully heal some of what has transpired in the past. I feel really deeply about this, and I feel, in terms of healing the past and healing our community, and I do feel it's my responsibility to repair that. Dr. Estrella and Mr. Asmani have made it clear that anything less than 4.9% will have a direct impact on our students. Finally, I want to touch on the redevelopment agency. They are a separate entity from the city, but we do partner with them. They bring in millions of dollars in grant money, something we're very grateful for. How that money and those funded projects are managed is very important. The $500,000 requested from the redevelopment agency is a small price to make sure we can secure those grant funds and use them appropriately. If we don't fund this request, it most likely means that we will not receive as much grant money, and it will mean decreased tax revenue because these projects won't be able to move forward. I fully support fiscal discipline and strong oversight, but we must do it carefully and strategically. Decisions made today will shape our city's financial health and the quality of services we provide for years to come. We've got to continue being strategic, and that means recognizing with thoughtful investment today, we will generate stronger revenue and greater efficiency tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that, may I get somebody to please move the operating budget for discussion and the ultimate vote? Thank you, Artie. With it now moved, Jared, I believe you have a brief presentation you want to go through that updates some of the numbers a bit. And Jared, if you're speaking, you are muted, so.
Okay. I'm actually gonna, it's pretty much the same slideshow that I did last week, but I wanted to hone in on the pension changes that we're doing. So I'm gonna skip forward a few slides here, um, and cut to the chase. As we saw last week, we kind of earmarked $2 million in savings in pension, and as I was talking about it, I posed it as coming potentially from two areas: one from changes in assumptions, and one from possibly underfunding the pension, the ADEC. Since then, I've had another conversation with our actuary, and they've come back and made some recommendations of changes to make to the methodology and the assumptions that are used in the pension system, in particular with fire and police. One of the changes was to increase the discount rate from 6.5% to 6.75%. And I want to go back and just touch on some. This is a new actuary, a brand new actuary, and so and that's one of the reasons that we're kind of doing this a little bit later in the process than we normally would, because they had to get up to speed, and we were giving them data from the new collective bargaining agreement, so it's taken a little bit longer, but I'm thankful to them for being able to come in before the budget was finalized. And so one of the changes that they recommended was increasing the discount rate. The town, I think, smartly reduced the discount rate from, I believe it was over 7% down to 6.5. In my first year, I believe it got down to 6.5, reducing it by a tenth every year. The new actuary is saying it says that there's a case to be made for increasing our discount rate to 7%. And effectively, what that's doing is saying that within the valuation of the pension, they believe that we can get a return on our investment of 7%, based on the types of investments that we are in, which has to do with our investment standard portfolio. And but to be on the conservative side, let's increase it not to 7%, but to 6.75%, because things are a bit volatile, especially now. in the markets and the geopolitical situation. So to go to 6.75%. That particular change to me is a complete no-brainer. We know that based on the information that we've gotten from our investment advisor that that they project that we would get somewhere north of 7% on our investments. But to hear that from an actuary is good to get a third party opinion on something like that and to be able so that gives me a lot of confidence that it is achievable, and never mind going down to only 6.75% and not doing the full 7%. So the benefits of that are that it's going to have an increase on our funded ratio. So the increase on our funded ratio will go, for example, one of the pension funds is at about 73%. It's probably going to go up to about 77, 78% in that range. So each of them will go up between 3 to 5 percentage points as a result of that. The other benefit to it is that it reduces the ADEC. So if we're counting on, and the principle is if we're counting on getting more revenue and factoring that into the valuation of the pension, getting more returns on our investment, then that's less that the city has to put in. And so that's why it lowers the ADEC. We would still be able to fund the ADEC at 100% because of that. There's improved generational equity, which has to do with the cost over the different generations, because if we keep the discount rate down at 6.5%, that means you have a lot of the younger generation picking up the costs and the older generation paying for it. And so it has another benefit in that sense as well. And then the other, I'm going to go back up now to the other change, which is kind of twofold. All four of the pensions right now are on an 11-year closed amortization schedule as of right now, which means the unfunded liability costs are amortized over 11 years. Fine for the city side because that is actually closed to new employees as well. So to keep that at an 11-year amortization schedule is fine. But their recommendation for police and fire, again, going back to the issue of volatility, is to increase that amortization period to 15 years. And then on top of that, to include a layering aspect of this, which is that the current unfunded liability would be spread out over the next 15 years. Any new unfunded liability would get layered in and would be put on a new 15-year schedule. And so that helps with the volatility because we're not taking it all on in that fixed 15-year period. And it's very helpful. It's being done a lot more now because of the volatility in the markets. And so, this is something that I'm very comfortable with and doesn't have any impact on the funded ratio of the fund and does reduce our ADEC. And so with those changes, again, we had a placeholder of $2 million. The new savings amount is just over $3 million, as you see there, $3,069,000, call it $3,070,000. And so I'm saying this, I'm giving this to you now because what we are and what we're asking you all to vote on as a base proposal is the mayor's revised budget as it was detailed last week, plus this additional $1,070,000, that delta between the 3 million and the 2 million. So that would be included in that proposal. So for example, if it just gets called for a vote and everybody, with no amendments or anything else, that's what you would be voting on, the changes from last week, as well as this one change.
So, Jared, do you have that in what was original in last week in the revised page two or the overall table for the budgets?
Yeah, so last week, if you may not remember, but if you look down toward the bottom of this page, there are the four different pensions. We just had one earmark that was $2 million in savings for pensions overall. Now that the actuaries have come back to us with specifics, we know exactly where the savings are related to which pension fund and the dollar amount related to each as a result of those changes in assumptions and methodology. So you can see all that information here. And between those four line items, they total the over $3 million, just over
I
$3 million.
understand and I appreciate the detail. I am looking for the top line and then I'll get to the questions from various board members. Last week, we were looking at a city budget of 222, 348. So yes, thank you.
Here you go. And
Thank you.
so, yeah, to go back through this, what is the effect of this change? It's again just over $1 million more in savings. So the savings and the mayor's revised updated budget, I'll say, brings the total increase on the city side down to 7.98%, just under 8%. If you remember, last week it was 8.5, so it's about, roughly a half a percent change there. On the overall city and Board of Ed, nothing changed on the Board of Ed here, just to be clear about that from last week. That's all, that's the same. And then the total of the two between the Board of Ed and the city is 6.3%, which
Thank
was
you.
at 6.54% last week.
Thank you. Questions specific to this before we get to discussing the overall budget? Troy, your hand was up first.
Jared, regarding the AAA rating, which I use as the guardrail, of course, any of that latest changes, do you have any indication that will downgrade us by automatically, or you have confidence that we'll continue to have the AAA with those changes, first of all? And second of all, where's the sheet regarding the taxing districts? I'd like to see that also.
Sure, and I can go to that in just a second. Let me address your question. Those changes will have a positive impact on our bond rating and primarily because of the fund ratio is going to increase. And so what the credit rating agencies are going to see is an increase in that funded ratio. And so that is a net positive for that. No, there's no downside to our credit rating. As we've said in the past, and you and I have spoken offline about this. I can't guarantee anything to do with the credit rating. You guys saw the presentation from Bill Lindsay, and you kind of know where the exposure is and where we have some deficiencies and where we are doing well, and there's a chance that there could be a negative outlook. But I can say with regard to these changes that it's a positive to the pension funds and our liabilities overall.
And the other page with the tax districts, there it is.
There you go. Again,
So
it's $1 million on the
I
overall,
know.
so it's not gonna, these haven't moved a whole lot, but they're definitely better.
Any reduction is good. Thank you, Jared.
Thank you, Troy. Ms. Yang.
You're muted, Ann. You're muted.
I apologize. What are the ratios have gone from what to what?
Depends on the fund, but they're gonna go up between 3% to 5% each.
And that is the extent of the overfunding?
That's the discount rate. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's overfunded on the OPEB. This has nothing to do with OPEB. None of these changes have anything to do with OPEB. So I'm kind of we don't need to have a conversation about that. That is overfunded. That's at on a market base at the end of last year was at 122%. So there's no issue there. We don't, there's no reason um, to address that anymore. And again, these changes don't affect OPEB. On the pension side of things, our our pensions are well funded. They are not overfunded. They are typically between 70 and 80% funded at this point in time. And what I'm saying is that each one of those is going to go up between 3 to 5%, depending on the fund.
And we have a pension board. What has the pension board and the chairman of the pension board said about this?
So they haven't weighed in on it, and they haven't weighed in on the past. And so I am going to at the next meeting, I'll let them know what's going on because their purview is really over the investments and monitoring, setting the investment portfolio and the allocations of investments, selecting the investment advisor, as well as helping with the actuary. But they don't have purview, and in the past, haven't had purview over changes like this.
I will just say, I think going and taking money out of pension funds starts to be a slippery slope. Just like we've been taking money out of our rainy day fund, which in my recollection, we used to never take money out of, and now it's kind of a constant. Um, and I understand I looked at the pension numbers at the end of the budget book, and I understand for the change. So this is a $3 million savings, but is this a one-time savings? And so that next year we're going to have to find $3 million of cost savings?
No, no, this will be ongoing because we'll have the same, presumably the same discount rate next year, and the same assumptions next year.
Okay, so what you're saying is if we were funding the pension plans, call it $10 million, we now just have to fund it $7 million and it'll be $7 million going forward.
All other things being equal, yes. I mean, they'll go through and they'll do their evaluation again. And if hopefully this doesn't happen, but if between now and next year the market tanks, then that's going to affect what we have to put into it. So, but all other things being equal, yes, that's true.
Now, when we talk about the rating agencies, so the one thing that came up relative to Bill Mooney's presentation is he was saying a concern about our fund balance. With this budget, what is our fund balance ratio going to be?
With this budget, our fund balance, so he would have to look at that and look at it from a non-budgetary standpoint. And I think that was part of his presentation that he did. I'd have to go back and look at it. But my recollection is that it would be around the 16 to 18% range.
Perhaps we could maybe revisit that at another time as well. Because what my concern is that while we had this $10 million hiccup on the service fund, I'm just concerned that we're going to get to next year and we're going to say we've got an issue with our rainy day fund and we're going to need $10 million to go into that rainy day fund.
Understood. Let's keep for the moment the focus on the changes to pension because I just want to finish out that, and Mr. Andrasco had his hand up as well, Ann, so I don't want to lose the continued thread. So, Joe?
That brings me up. Thank you. So Jared, effectively, we've got a little under $1.1 million coming back. Are we at a point tonight where we have to make a decision about what to do with that?
You can make a decision. Sure, just like anything in the budget, you can make a decision about what to do with that. I think the mayor
The answer
feels.
though, Joe, is yes, we have to make a decision.
Okay.
If you or others feel that I'm making this up, that instead of bringing that to the bottom line to the benefit of the taxpayer, to Ms. Yang's prior point, we want to reduce the fund balance drawdown by the equivalent amount and therefore leave the tax burden and budget at a higher number. That is we have that at our disposal and discretion this evening, but we do have to vote on it. I will say that the way this has been presented, the city is recommending we take that to the bottom line rather than reinvest it across line items.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions about this change in this revision? All right, seeing none, Jared, can I ask you to please just go back to the prior page that had the overall budget and the cuts? Thank you. What it's now time to do as a board is to discuss any amendments and or changes that any of us propose to the two different budgets. I would like to start on the Board of Education side of things, where again, the recommendation is a 4.91% increase from a budget perspective. Mr. Jelleret.
I would like to make an amendment to the Board of Ed budget.
Thank you. And what would that be?
Do I need a second or
No.
just go ahead? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you have to move it. You're gonna have to make a motion.
All right.
Yeah.
So we have a motion to consider amending the Board of Education budget. All in favor of the discussion on that, please signify by saying aye.
I,
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstentions? I'm sorry, Joe?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else opposed? My screen, I cannot see Artie and or Kendrick at the moment.
Opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two opposed. So it is 5-2 that motion. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is this bringing this to discussion or
Yes,
okay, I oppose.
you oppose. So there's 3 opposed to discussing a lower Board of Education budget. Artie, I cannot see you, so could you verbally confirm your position on this?
I'm good with discussing it. Motion to move forward with the motion.
All right, the motion therefore passes 4-3.
Is Mr. Chair, just going forward, I don't know if Mario's still on. I think this should be treated as any other motion where if there's a second for it, then you discuss it and then you vote, then you would vote on whether or not to accept it, either accept or reject it. I'm not sure if
Thank you for the
Mario's still on to
clarification,
confirm
Jared.
that.
That's a good point. So we are just at the discussion phase. We will then vote on what is proposed. So go ahead, Troy.
Yes, I'd like to, in discussion of the budget, and as we all know how difficult this year has been, as the mayor said at the onset of the year, I have to say, when she gave us our original recommendation of the 4% budget for the Board of E, I thought that was difficult, thoughtful, and I thought it was good for the city, in fact, to try to help us get through this difficult year. Oddly enough, the night that we had our bond council advisor come in, the meeting after ours, the city council decided to go from her thoughtful budget from 4% to 4.9, which did, I have to say, surprise me. And I was also disappointed by, because this is not an easy decision and we have to work together on this. First of all, let's not forget that how much we have been helping the city, the Board of Ed over the last, I've been on 7 years. Obviously, all the schools that we've done, the largest item is the debt service line in our budget. And of course, a lot of our debt is from the projects. A couple of things came up today, in fact, in the news, which I think is good news for the city. finally, it looks like the state is going to move forward with moving on an additional fund. So they said 170 million, but we don't know that number. But that sounds like the Democrats who control the state party looks like they said that's very confident that at least that number will happen. And and Norwalk, obviously we'll get our share of that. We don't know obviously what much, but that will additionally will help us. Obviously, we will continue to support the school projects until the crown jewel, the Norwalk High School, which is going to be done in the fall of 2027. And then my feeling about this is I'm just trying to get through this phase in. When I look at the adjusted numbers that he put in for the tax districts, we're still from like 9% up to 15%, which I just think I just cannot, with good conscience, for the taxpayers, support those numbers. I just want to get through our phase in, which will be another year and a half, and at that point, I think we could, after taking a little deep breath, we could start building up a few things with like the rainy day fund and also the other, obviously, school projects down the line. This pattern of spending is, like a lot of my colleagues on the city council use the word, is unsustainable the way it's set up. And I know it's a difficult decision, but I really think we need to go back to the original thoughtful number that the city, Jared and his team put forward with the mayor at the beginning of the season. And I think if we can get that number, I think that will definitely help the city and our overall blend rate. And I think it really will help this year. So
So
those are my comments.
just to be clear, Troy, you are proposing that we amend this back to a 4% increase or the $257.1 million number. Yes?
Yes, a 4% increase. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thoughts, discussion, comments related to that recommendation? Artie?
So I'm going to go back as well to the original meeting we had when we got the mayor's proposed budget. And this was the first draft. We got the 4% increase, as Troy just mentioned. It's up on a screen there. At 4%, I believe it says $9.8 million increase over the last year. Now, I think this is where I'm a little confused, and hopefully I'll understand it after I ask a few questions. We are getting the $3 million again next year from the state, correct? Which puts us really at over a $12.8 million increase. That puts us at over 5% increase that the Board of Ed will get if we add that in there. So at a 4%, add the 3 million, the Board of Ed will be funded more than 4.91%. And to Troy's point, with the $170 million that we just saw in the papers today, we're going to get something, whether it's 2 million, 3 million, we don't know, but we will get something that will also add to the Board of Ed funding. So as I see it, and again, just my eyes, my perspective, the Board of Ed will be over 5% that they'll be getting for next year. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Artie. Linda, I saw your hand come up. I believe you want to make a comment in regard to Artie's numbers before I get to Ms. Yang and to Kendrick.
Yes. Good evening, members of the board. To answer Artie's question, I think this came up last week, and I believe there was also an email exchange where this was also clarified. When the original budget was presented with the mayor and the revisions, that the cap said the increase to the Board of Ed includes that additional funding. There is no additional $3 million coming to the Board of Ed. And so the presumption that the Board of Ed is going to get 9.8 plus 3 or 12.1 plus 3, that's inaccurate because that's already part of that number. And I can have Jared confirm that, but I believe that's what was confirmed in writing. And that is with respect to the $3 million.
Are you referencing, Linda, are you referencing the 4.91? It's in that number, or is it in the original proposed budget of 4.0?
It is in both.
It's in
The
both
original budget of
accounts.
4.0
Yeah.
included the 3 million. There is not an additional, and neither is there an additional in the 4.9. That is all in, all inclusive. And
Okay, but my question is then, if that's coming from the state, then it shouldn't be on the on the taxpayer.
So this happens, it happens in an indirect sort of way. Because there are limitations and constraints on what we can use that money for, that $3 million. And so effectively what we did was we reduced some line items, some spending within the city budget by $3 million. Some spending that is eligible because this has to do with transportation and roads and salt and expenditures like that, transit. And so we applied that reduction and we applied that grant to those. So what you would see and what you will see in the budget is that certain line items within DPW are down because of that, because those are being funded out of there. And so because of the timing of when this happened last year, we didn't, this was really the only choice we had in order to get the funding to the Board of Education. And it was a priority of Mayor Rilling at the time to do so. And so that was really the only way that we could go about doing that. And so it's kind of indirect, but there is a reduction on the city side, which I will say, quote unquote, freed up $3 million within the budget overall and was appropriated, deappropriated from the city side and given to the Board of Education. This will be, admittedly, this is going to be an issue for FY28. Unless we continue to get that $3 million or the $10 million overall in FY28, it's going to be an issue for the budget. And at that time, when we're developing the FY28 budget, we'll have to make a determination at that point. Is that burden of not having that 3 million, is it going to fall on the Board of Education or is it going to fall on the city? And we'll make that we'll have that conversation during the development at that time.
But to
Jared, that
Jared,
number is part of the MBR.
That's not it's not an issue. It's not going to be an issue.
but to Jared's point, I mean, excuse me, to Artie's point though, Jared, the 3 million came from the state. I mean, how you moved it around in the budget, I think that's the point.
Right. So the taxpayers are saving $3 million in the city budget this year and next year if this proposal pans out for next year as well.
Right. The said another way, the savings is seen on the city side because otherwise the city budget would have been 3 million higher than it is today. Before I move on to the next question, Artie, does that answer all of your questions at this point? You're muted, but I see you nodding your head yes. All right. Kendrick, I believe you were next. Sorry, Mr. Constant, you have the floor.
No worries. I support the 4.9 increase. Reality is there's no guarantee that the state will provide funding. And if they do provide funding, we don't know what that amount is. We're already seeing a slowdown as far as grants that have been provided in the past and supplemental to the budget. And at the same time, the ECS formula does not favor Norwalk because of our growing grand list. Norwalk is viewed as wealthier, but it's not the same as our neighboring towns. So that limits us. We're in a position where external funding is uncertain, federal support is declining, and the city is expected to absorb more. So all that being said, I think we need to be mindful. Reducing the Board of Ed's increase under the assumption that we'll get additional funding, it puts the risk and the burden on the students based on the assumption that we'll get funding. So I think we need to remain competitive and look at surrounding towns because they continue to invest in their schools because they understand that it not only affects the students, but also family retention, property values, and the city's overall attractiveness. It's not just education or the students, but there are long-term effects. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendrick. Ms. Yang?
This $3 million number, is that, since we put it on the city side and increased the BOE budget by that 3 million, does that increase the MBR by the 3 million? So it becomes a ongoing obligation for future years?
It does, but it's we talk about the MBR a lot. There's practically speaking, there's really no consequence to that. Unless we get down to a point where there's going to be no increase in the Board of Education's budget, or maybe a 1% increase in the Board of Education's budget, there's no effect of that, because all the MBR says is that we have to spend the same amount of money that we did in the previous year, plus any increase in ECS funding. And so we, for example, in this budget, there's $12 million in increase. It's not going to be an issue. It's not going to have any impact on the MBR, which says we don't have to spend a cent more.
All right, so this is the issue. Okay, so you have this ever increasing base. So last year we got 4.5 million, but you increased the base over what we actually approved. So at 4.9%, we're really looking at 6.9% over what we approved. Now you take that $3 million and you put it in the city side, and actually now it's not the 6.9, but you're talking another 150 basis points. So you're talking about 8.5. So I understand what you're saying, but I think if that $3 million was for the schools, it should stay with the schools, and their budget increase is reduced by that amount. And then we look at the city side as just being that much bigger. I don't think we should play around. I don't think we should shift the money around. Okay? I think it should be, and so that way we maintain apples to apples comparisons year over year, where we don't have to go back and make these mental adjustments as to really what it is. Because at 4.9%, we're really at 6.9%. And then we got that emergency funding, which I might have thought had been a one-time event. But that one-time event is now an ongoing budget level. So I think Artie is correct. If you're going to take that $3 million, take it out, put it in the schools, and reduce the budget, what the perceived budget increase on the schools, and then you're really looking at what the city's budget increase is, which is another $3 million or another 150 basis points.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to point out that these were decisions that were made last year, in terms of how to handle that $3 million to give to the Board of Education, because they very, very, very much needed it. So this board and our prior mayor made that decision, and this, including it in this year's budget, is just the practice that had been established. So I just want to point that out.
Thank you,
Sorry, go ahead. May I speak, Mr. Abrams?
Yes, Ms. Yang.
I would say just because it happened one year doesn't mean we have to do it in subsequent years. I would also posit that most of the other cities around us are not looking at as large of increases as we are. If you look at the dollar spending per pupil in the city of Norwalk, we are comparable to other towns. We're not deficient. And we have to start looking at some of these elements as being variable costs. So our student population is declining. Our ECS funding will decline because our students are declining. So we need to start looking at a fixed and variable aspect to it. Because right now, as far as I can see, everybody looks at this as just one big fixed cost. And we're going to have declining grants. We're going to have declining ECS. So if you're only going to look at it as a fixed cost, that means the tax burden is just going to continue to increase to the taxpayer. And that to me is not right.
Understood, Ms. Yang. Thank you. Dr. Estrella, I see your hand is raised, but forgive me, I need guidance on a point of order in terms of um, speakers outside the Board of Estimate and Taxation, if not addressing a direct question by board members. I know Mario is still on the line, at least his line is open. Are we allowed to have Dr. Estrella speak unless it is a direct question that was asked of her? Can somebody help me with that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would suggest that you ask Dr. Estrella a question so that she could respond. So you may want to ask her if she would like to provide comment on, et cetera. And so
Thank
you
you very
would
much for the guidance.
introduce her statement. Yeah, ask her a question, I would say.
Thank you very much. And forgive that little sidebar, but I want to do this properly. So,
Thank you.
Dr. Estrella, do you have a comment on the budget as it's been presented?
Sorry about that. I was muted. Thank you, Mr. Abram, for allowing me to speak. There's a few points that I want to clarify. First, our per pupil allocation is not comparable to other neighboring districts. I think that's important to highlight. And as we look at funding, it's important to know that yes, our enrollment has dropped. Yet, as we built this budget, we took that into account and we right-sized the budget to take into consideration the enrollment decline. At the same time, although our enrollment has dropped slightly, we have the student population that we're surveying in terms of high needs has increased. And what it requires to service these students it costs more than servicing students that are not high needs. And I think that that factor has to be taken into consideration. And if you recall last year, when the city allotted the additional funds, it was because it was needed to sustain and maintain the personnel that was servicing the scholars of Norwalk. And making a reduction of bringing the budget down to 4%. And Mayor Smith knows we've had a number of conversations of why we felt and could quantify that 4% was not sufficient to maintain programs across the organization, particularly because it would force us to reducing essential personnel at the school level. And over the course of the past several years, our budget has been reduced significantly when we take into account what inflation and the cost of healthcare and other factors that over time have increased. Given the proportionate amount that has been allocated, we've had to make significant reductions in essential services that our scholars need. And not getting the 4.9% this year will put us in a predicament where we will have to further reduce essential personnel that we need. And it gets to a point where the system is depleted so much that it will become it will create a situation where we will be unable to provide the essential services that have yielded the positive outcomes that we have as a district. And I think it was articulated earlier how having strong schools yield increase in real estate, make ensuring that people want to come to Norwalk because of the great programs and services that we provide. And having an additional reduction is going to really limit our ability to continue to sustain the quality of education that the community thrives and expects from us.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. Ms. Yang.
I would like to just take a step back and think about, again, the taxpayer here. So the city of Norwalk is 90,000 people, 92,000. We have 11,000 students, so that's 10% of the population, 12% of the population. If I look at the demographics, 10% of the households in the city of Norwalk have children under 18. So 55% of our budget is towards 10% of our population. So with that, I would like to read a comment that came in this afternoon, which I think goes to Mr. Abrams' silent majority of the senior citizens here who only get 2.8% increase in their incomes. And it's from a young woman or an older woman. The BOE and parents always want more money. They're never satisfied. It is the parents' financial responsibility to supply food for breakfast and lunch and whatever programs and resources they want. Only fund needs, not wants. It's not fair or right to those of us who do not or never had children in the school system. Again, the kids are the parents' responsibility all the way around, financially and otherwise. I only receive 994 Social Security dollars a month. I am a nervous wreck worrying about how much the property taxes are going up. The constant tax increases mainly from the greedy BOE and parent has to stop. It's not about them all the time. I'm sure this will fall on deaf ears. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I think that is somewhat representative of the silent majority that Mr. Abrams referenced in the beginning. 25% of our population is over 65. And I think perhaps they don't come out in the full force because they feel that they're not going to be listened to. 2 years ago, there was a petition that was signed by 1,000 people over Easter weekend asking for our budget to be reduced. And nothing happened. So I think people think that whatever they say, it doesn't matter, and that they're just going to get these tax increases. And I personally, I see people needing to leave Norwalk because they can no longer afford it. We need to keep Norwalk in some semblance affordable. So that's me being on my soapbox.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. I do have a question myself, and I'll direct it at both Jared and I believe Linda for help in guidance. I would like to understand, should the state approve the $170 million in incremental educational funding based on the current ECS formula, can you provide me with a rough estimate as to what Norwalk would be allocated out of that funding? Either Jared or Linda, or perhaps Dr. Estrella, whoever has that number.
I can take a stab at it. I don't know because the ECS formula is complicated. I don't know how they plan where it's going to get applied. It could be applied to the base amount, but then there are also other factors that go into that. As you know, the ECS The way that it's funded, it's in two different tranches. There's a tranche that goes to the city. There's a tranche that goes to the Board of Eds directly. And I don't know where that would be. So there's quite a few unknowns with that additional funding. I think the other challenge with that, if let's say we pick a number and we make the assumption that that's the number that we're going to get, we don't have that number. And therefore, we will have to reconcile to what the BET approves. And so if we assume that the number is 500,000, then you would lower our budget to 500,000, but the BOE would have to reconcile a budget that's less than that. We cannot reconcile to an anticipated future revenue. Now, we would make decisions now, and should that money come through in the end, then we could reverse those decisions. But I don't know that the BOE or the BT can approve a budget, short a budget with an anticipation of future funding that hasn't been approved by anyone, just by a headline in the newspaper. So that would be my comment.
I fully understand that. I
I think to
appreciate
add,
that perspective and acknowledge every aspect of it and agree with every aspect of it, Linda. That said, understanding based on the current formula and the current allocation, what may or may not happen directionally is an important factor for this board as we go through our deliberations.
I can,
and I think,
Mr. Chair, I can give you a sense of what it could be. And again, this is just based on the current allocation. I know that Norwalk gets approximately 2/3% of the total amount of ECS funding that the state provides. And so if you apply that 2/3% to the 170, it's approximately $1.1 million in extra. Again, there's a lot of assumptions there, no changes to the formula, but I think that's a good ballpark of what you might expect. I do have another concern,
yeah.
very important concern that I'd like to raise when if I can move on to another topic.
As long as it relates to the Board of Education, yes.
Yep.
Please go ahead.
I think one of the concerns that I have with reducing the BOE too much is that there's still this issue of the healthcare costs hanging out there. As part of the agreement, we talked a lot about the $3 million. As part of that agreement, for that extra money, the Board of Education signed and approved an MOU. Part of that MOU was that the Board of Education fully fund its healthcare costs, that they have to do that. Whether or not they do or they don't, if there are changes to their healthcare plan and the additional funding is not provided, then the Board of Ed is going to have to make a decision about whether they want to stick to that MOU and fully fund their healthcare, or if they think other costs are more, frankly, are more important. And so my concern to kind of wrap it up is that we're part of the decision that the BET is making tonight is a decision to restore and bring back that internal service fund. And if you cut the funding for the Board of Education, there is a chance that the Board of Education is going to disregard the MOU that they signed and that they approved, and will cut their healthcare funding, which is going to deplete the internal service fund and undo to whatever extent the work that we're doing to restore it.
That's a very fair point and a very important concern, Jared. Thank you for raising it.
Mr. Chairman, can I just respond to
Hang
that?
on, let me finish my thought, please. My point
Go right
here,
ahead.
my point here is I would truly hope that through these challenging times and in recognition of everything we have been trying to do together with the Board of Education, they would do everything in their power not to disregard a memo of understanding. That to me is an unacceptable business and professional practice and something that totally throws to the wind the collaboration that we have been trying to build across the city and the Board of Education. With that said, before you speak, Troy, Madam Mayor, your hand has been up for a moment.
Yes, thank you, Chair Abrams. Yeah, I just want to address Ms. Yang's concern for our seniors, and I just want you to be reassured that I share a deep concern for our seniors, and that that is part of my commitment to our seniors to look at every way that I can to help, right? And we've already, been talking with Lamont. I've been talking with my staff about how we can better fund senior housing, how we can look to better tax relief for our seniors. So I just want you to know that's a priority for me moving forward. I also I do have a question for Dr. Estrella, if you will allow me. And it goes to, and it really goes to why I have gotten behind the 4.9%, because I know that you've really worked hard to, you were asking for the 6.5 and coming down to 4.9. You worked very hard to, to look at cuts that did not affect students. And the way I understand it is that moving forward, if you did not have the 4.9%, that would have to go to, then it would go to the schools for school-based budgeting, right? And I think that that's part of why things got so challenging last year and why parents came out is because the different schools have to look at, where they're going to find, where they're going to cut, right? And then they have to look at, where maybe there's not quite as many students in a particular program. And that's why maybe our music programs might be threatened. And we don't want to see that happen. So I'd like to hear Dr. Estrella talk a little bit more about that process and, and what it might possibly look like.
Dr. Estrella?
Thank you, Mayor Smith. I think one of the things that we've been grappling with right now, moving from the 6.5 to the 4.9, have been what are the things that we need to reduce. And Mayor Smith, as you recall, originally we had a portion of our reductions when you proposed a 4%. The largest chunk of reductions happening at the central level and central programs, and then the second portion being at the school level. And when the budget was elevated to a little higher to the 4.9%, the amount of funding that we were going to potentially reduce at the school level was then reinstated back to the schools. And that allowed us to ensure that all of the programs at the schools were stayed intact. At this point, even at the central level, we will have one person doing the job that requires probably 2 to 3 people, and the personnel is significantly overworked at this point, and we have no fallbacks if anything happened, which is very problematic in an organization. Um, so if we were to revert back, we would have to go back to schools and figure out what are the potential reductions that we would have to make that would impact programming. Already, we have classes maxed out at the contractual largest sizes to minimize costs. We have right-sized schools to ensure that, given some of the enrollment reductions in certain schools, that we took that into consideration and made those reductions in our budget ask. We have also looked at vacancies and what potential vacancies we were not going to backfill, particularly at the central level, and also what programs at the central level we could reduce. And remembering that even when we reduce central level programs, they have a direct impact in schools because the programs at the central level are in service of schools. So going back to a lower number than 4.9 will put us back into the place that we didn't want to be at the onset of this budget process, which is impacting schools. And on top of that, We also have the challenge of the teachers' health insurance that we're trying to problem solve around, but we still have this $3 million gap that on top of what we have to reduce to get to the 4.9% is a factor that we are working on addressing, and like Jared said, has implications in some of our funds. And to Mr. Adams' point, we don't look to breaking any agreements that we have established with the city, and that's why we've had a number of conversations of being very diligent about working with the bargaining group and finding creative solutions to solve this challenge. Nobody predicted having a 33% increase. I think we negotiated down now to 32%, but that's still a significant increase from where we were last year. And those are some of the things that we have been trying to problem solve, in addition to getting to that 4.9 number and making sure that our schools remain intact. I think it was mentioned earlier, the concern for our senior citizens, and we're very mindful of that. And that's why we've been very cautious about how we are budgeting. And I'm pretty sure many of the BET members also heard from our parents and their pleads in making sure that programs don't continue to be dismantled because they will directly impact the future of Norwalk, because anything that happens that is not in the best interest of our students will have a long-term effect in the future of the city.
Thank you, Dr. Estrella. Mr. Jelleret.
You're on mute, Troy.
Sorry. First of all, I'd like to address the point that Kendrick made earlier regarding the surrounding towns and their support of the Board of Ed. As far as I know, when I'm just reading the paper, the surrounding towns are 4% is very strong for the surrounding towns. We were just speaking with Stanford, and I saw Wilton, and they're all around 3-4% for the Board of Ed increases. Unfortunately, we're at 15%. So it's hard to say that, we are competing with our towns and supporting our board. It's just that we are just at wit's end now. We have no room, no wiggle room anymore. We can't use our rainy day fund anymore to support these budget shocks. And we cannot continue to overload the taxpayers. I don't know what number would be too much for us to put on the taxpayers. 25%? I mean, would you say that's too much? I don't know. I've asked this question in many meetings to Jared and to everybody. I don't know any town that is in 15%. I'm saying let's get past our phase in, then we could rebuild. As we rebuild, then we could continue to support the schools as we have. And the second point is, Jared, you just brought up this MOU thing. Did you bring that up when you and the mayor talked to them about the 4% budget at the beginning of the season? Did that come up, or is it just something you just thought of? I don't know.
It didn't have to come up at that time. It was assumed that they were going to stick to the MOU and that they would have to, and the Board of Ed knows that they have to fund it.
Right. And I want to be clear, there has been
Okay.
no statement made that they are backing off of their MOU. That has not been overtly or directly stated in any way, shape, or form. It is a concern that Jared raised, but it is not a reality in any way at this point in time. Ms. Yang.
I just want to follow up one thing quick. That the healthcare issue from the BOE came up, my recollection is came up after the fact as well, after the mayor put forth her 4% proposed budget increase.
Okay, that's what I was asking. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Yang.
I'm going to talk again about the senior citizens. So a lot of this discussion here surrounds healthcare, increased healthcare costs on excellent plans. Whereas there are people who live in the city who are, because they're seeing increased taxes, are wondering whether or not they can even afford to have a health care plan. And Mayor Smith, I appreciate that you have an interest in the seniors, but I think they're interested less in senior housing and exemptions, but just less taxes to put money into their pocket for them to decide how to spend. So again, senior citizens, regular citizens, everyone is facing these increased costs. And a double-digit increase. Stanford said we cannot put an 8% increase onto our citizens. And we're double digit. So we really should be going down, not continuing to go up.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. Mr. Kasimis.
My question is very simple. I guess it's to Jared or Madam Mayor. Why did we get a 4% proposal in the very beginning? I mean, we realize it's going to be a tough budget, but why 4? Why do we start there?
So, I can answer that. And I'll be blunt. I was, I was quite surprised by the increase on the city side. And I would have liked to have recommended more for the Board of Education. But, those were my early weeks in the job. And, I was doing my very best to balance everything. It was as we started to really, really dig into where we might find, more cuts on the city side, and sitting through the city council meeting where they unanimously, and mind you, and I had no vote there, right? I want to make that clear. I had no vote. It was a unanimous vote of that city council, and listening to what I felt was a courageous and compassionate discussion. Um, and additionally, the discussions that I've had with Dr. Estrella, and Jared and I together have had with Dr. Estrella and Mr. Osmani, and recognizing what the challenges are, I just felt that, I was going to support that increase. So I hope that answers your question, Artie.
Thank you. Before we go to other questions, Jared, Tom, I have a question for you. And hopefully you've been able to look through this conversation to run these numbers. What is the overall budget and tax implications if we were to go to 4% on the Board of Education side and the current city recommendation of 7.98%? What's that do to the overall percentage increase and the tax rates per district? Do you have those numbers?
Yes, Tom has those.
Yeah, I do. I can share my screen. I did some scenarios.
Tom, let me stop sharing mine.
Okay.
There we go.
We need to make it a little bigger. Already got that?
I need you to make it a lot bigger, please.
How about that? Good?
There you go. Thank you.
All right. So all this is just over on the left-hand side here. There's their baseline number that the Board of Ed 247, 194. And then I went up 0.5% increments, 4% all the way up to 5%. And that's the current 4.91. That's the dollar equivalent. So this just drops in those dollar equivalents across the board. This assumes on the city side what Jared just showed you at the beginning of the meeting, with that just under 8% total amount, which includes the new ADEC numbers. So that it assumes those city side numbers stay static. So what Troy just proposed at 4%, here are the numbers for the median, the average tax bill, percent dollar wise and percentage wise. So a high of 14.78% in the second district and a low of 8.6% in the fifth district. Again, the BOE percent is in the upper left, 4%. And here are the dollar amounts and the percentages. And I'm just going to scroll down all the way down to 5% just to show you the difference. So again, 8.6 is the low, 14.78 is the high. So we're going to scroll all the way down to the 5%. And then you'll see it is a low of 9.33% and a high of 15.5% at the 5% level. And all these different tables are at 1% increments. I'm sorry, a tenth of 1%. So 5%, 4.9%. And I can jump to any specific one that you want. The 4.9% obviously is very close to the 4.91% that they're at right now. So
So we're talking about less than 0.5% in savings for the average tax bill by district, roughly.
Yeah, so what you're talking about, you mean you're referring to Troy's 4% proposal at present right now versus where
Yes, versus the 4.9.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just add there, Ed? I think that, when I go back to the city council meeting where this was discussed, I think that was one of the compelling factors for me, that it's not a significant increase in the tax increase for the average taxpayer.
Increase is a bad word in general, given where we are, Madam Mayor. So, but
Understood.
I
Understood.
appreciate the point.
Yeah.
All right. Final comment, Ms. Yang.
So yes, it's only 0.5%, but that's 0.5% on the budget. So you can turn it the other way. It's only 0.5%. Why can't people find 0.5% in their own budgets rather than making the taxpayer find 0.5% in their own budgets? The other part of the 4.9%, we had the 4.9% vote came off the heels of our bond council meeting, in which he was starting to point to the weakness in our ratings relative to the fund balance. So I was really quite surprised coming off of that, where he's cautioning for fiscal conservancy, and then we turn around and increase the budget. 4% was the right starting number and the right number, Mayor Smith.
All right. So at this point, ladies and gentlemen, we have an amended proposal at 4% versus the original 4.91%. Prior to voting on that, is there any additional amended proposal anyone would like to make? To Tom's point, he showed different scenarios from 4% to the 4.91%. Is anyone interested in bringing forward a recommendation somewhere in between the two? If not, that's okay. What I am going to do now then is call for a vote by the BET members. Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, I think we should vote on this first, and then if there's an amendment, there's an amendment.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Fine. At this point, all in favor of Troy's amended 4.0% BOE increase signify by saying aye.
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 I am going to recommend that as well. I just think in the fiscal environment we're in, it's very challenging, it's very difficult, but we have to balance everything. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Opposed.
The amended budget of 4.0% passes by a 4-3 margin. Let's now move to the city side and the revised recommendation of 221 million and change. Does anyone wish to make any amendments to that budget? Ms. Yang.
Since we were asked to go through and make amendments, line items, I have several line items that
I would ask Ms. Yang that you just bring them forward one at a time, and we will vote on each individual line item as it is raised.
Okay. I'd like to start with the Harbor Commission. where last year they did not receive a grant and they've come back to ask for a $10,000 grant.
We already removed that grant as part of our open items, so that grant is no longer in the budget.
Is that correct, Jared?
Uh, no, that it is funded in the budget still. It was things that came up in the open items were just discussed. There wasn't any dispositive, any action taken on them to either include them or not.
Right,
So
I
so this
stand I
so this
stand
would be the
corrected
time.
then. So all in favor of removing the $10,000 for the Harbor Commission grant, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Do we have to move any of this, or we just
We
it's
moved the
okay?
entire budget, Troy, so we're
Okay.
fine with that. The
Okay.
removal of that line item is approved.
The next is, I just want to confirm this with you, Mr. Schmidt, is the Transit Authority grant, which was $100,000. I believe in your revised budget, you took that down to zero. Is that correct? Or is it still at $100,000?
It's still at $100,000.
I would move that it is taken down to zero.
Can you give me one, please give me 1 second. I just I want to check one thing. Um, before we do that.
Could we maybe move on and you can come back and clarify that? Or
Yes. Yes, thank you.
because my motion or my suggestion would be that it is zero. And if Mr. Schmidt comes back and says that it's 100,000, I would suggest it go to zero, given that they've got $5 million of balance sheet. This is working capital that we're funding, and they are perfectly funded to 2029. So I don't know what should we do, Mr. Abrams? Should I continue on with my list?
Well, Jared, have you found the numbers? Can you
Yes.
confirm?
Yes, so a couple of things here. So that it is still recommended at 100,000. Um,
Yeah.
and I would want the mayor to weigh in on this. That funding, the funding for that actually fell under the municipal grant and aid money in the current year, and so we're funding it out of there. And I'm being a little bit long-winded about this. You could actually cut that funding, and we would fund it out of the grant. That $100,000. Our proposal would be that you could fund that out of the grant, so they would continue to get the 100,000, but you would see the savings in the budget.
Yeah, and I support that. I think it's really important that, the transit district has made great strides over recent years, and we want to keep growing our public transit and the Wheels to You. And so I think that, I want to keep the 100,000 in.
So I just want to be clear about what I heard because I'm a bit confused. I believe what I heard Jared say, and please correct me if I am wrong, is that we can remove the line item that Ms. Yang is proposing because there is an alternate source from which to backfill that funding
Correct.
so that the department remains whole, but the budget is reduced by $100,000 because of the state grant.
Correct.
That being said, all in favor of removing that $100,000 signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed. Mayor is
Opposed.
opposed. That line item is removed.
The next is the probate court. It's a very relatively small amount of $35,000, but last year, the judge was asked to, one, to go back to the state, given the level of probate fees that he manages, that comes in, to see if he can get some funding, and to work with the city in terms of potentially using the city's buying power for supplies, given that this is office supplies. And we asked that question when he came forward, and he said he did neither of those things. So I would propose that we reduce his funding by $15,000 to see if he can find some savings, as we have suggested.
So the proposed amendment is a reduction in the probate court budget by $15,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Can we get some
There's a
comments?
couple of
Can we
questions.
get some comments from Jared first, please?
Oh,
Please. Go ahead, Jared.
I'm concerned about this reduction. I think, there could be a way to possibly save a couple, $1,000 maybe dollars by working with the city. But with regard to the state portion of it, it's set in statute. We could run afoul of the statute, and I don't know what the consequences are, but we're required to provide a certain amount of funding for them. So whether he goes to the state or not, he's working in a system that has to do with the overall state budget. And I understand that you may not be happy with him, and will continue to commit to continue to put pressure on him to the extent that we can. But we do have an obligation to provide that funding.
Then I will amend my motion from, since it's $35,000 of office supplies, that we amend it to being an overall grant of $30,000 and a reduction of $4,946.
Mr. Ellis, you have your hand up. Is that because you have an additional comment on this?
Yeah, during the departmental budget meetings, he came and he brought a member of his staff. They looked into the office supplies issue as asked. They went to Sharon Connors. They came to me. I explained to them what we had done with Amazon Business Services, as many other departments within the city have done. And they were not eligible to do that. Sharon told them. Sharon looked into it and went to Amazon, and because they were not part of the city proper, they were not eligible to do it. So they did what was asked, and they were not eligible to do it.
Okay. That being said, Ms. Yang, does that change your mind on your motion?
That's fine. Leave it.
So we'll remove that motion.
We'll remove that motion.
Thank you. What's next?
I would like to move to the redevelopment agency, which is has overlap with TMP. And that budget there is 1.6 million. This $500,000 is funding, and it is a support of administrative costs. They have $12 million of revenue. They have $3 million of cash on their balance sheet. They have a $5 million funded balance. While they may decide that they want to have Mr. Badoli live in Germany, I do not believe that that type of management and that type of staffing, especially because we have asked repeatedly for their head count, who it is, what they do, and what they make. And $500,000 is a lot of money. And the indication of nobody knowing that this guy is in Germany, it is not in any of the board minutes or executive sessions that it has been approved. So I would like to propose reducing the this grant from 500,000 to 250,000 in half.
One comment before I open it to others in discussion. I want to be clear that it is not the jurisdiction or responsibility of this board to look at how the organization staffs itself, where the organization chooses to have its employees sit. That said, if we believe that there is not a need for funding at the level that has been presented, you can make that amendment, but I need it to be clear that this cannot be and should not be a vote on staffing and how the department chooses to staff itself. Madam Mayor.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate some of the comments that I made, in my opening, which is, the redevelopment agency, whatever your opinion is managing $50 million worth of grants, and they need a staff in order to do that. There are still several major projects that will ultimately benefit the city hugely with tax revenue that we need for them to see through. And so, and my understanding is that this funding was put in place several years ago, in order that, as these grants were coming in order for them to fund it. I think that in the future, and a couple of years from now, it's more appropriate to look at reducing that. But right now, the work that they need to do is crucial to the financial health of the city. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That being said, yes, Ms. Yang.
I would offer Mayor Smith, we have asked several times to try to understand the criticality of what it is that they're doing. The 50 million is a number that's been over a long period of time. They have not come to us and said, we're managing XYZ grants for you in this area. And so, in absence of any of that information, what can we assume? I have no idea, but that's $500,000 of taxpayer money that we don't really know what's going on. So let's
The motion has been made. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
The motion that amendment fails 2-5. What's next, Ms. Yang?
We're talking about the voter registrar, which at this point of time, Jared, what is the budget number? It's close to $1 million. It's 991.56.
Believe it or not, I don't know it off the top of my head. So if you give me a minute, I can look at it.
That is the budget that we funded to continue funding it out of contingency, and went from like 500,000 or 600,000 to $1 million. And
Yeah, largely due to the early voting.
largely due to the early voting, which I would also then posit requires less staffing during the voting days. And so I think that process could be much better managed, because at $20,000, at 20,000 votes, that's $50 per vote. And I think that there is more to be done in terms of them to be better managing. It's 6 people who are preparing for an important vote, yes, but it's 6 people, whereas the building department's got 11 people.
Ms. Yang, I'm sorry, it's starting to get late. What is the specific amendment you'd like to make here?
I to amend that budget number is reduced by $400,000 back to historical levels of 600,000, and that they are asked to find efficiencies.
All in favor of the amendment as go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, the, so the budget, to answer your question, was $927,593. This is a massive cut. That similar to the probate court, they're required to provide certain services during election day. They've been handed these mandates because of early voting and other mandates from the state that are not funded. And you know, as we talked about, we were going back and we wanted to stop the practice of taking money out of contingency without, you know, especially given the state of contingency and our fund balance these days, and budget this properly. And so that's what we did. You know, we're trying to be responsible about this and to project what the costs are going to be. And this is our estimate. A cut like that is going to be problematic and potentially put us in a bad place with the state, with them not being able to fulfill their statutory duty.
Understood. The amendment has been presented. At this point, all in favor of Ms. Yang's amendment of a reduction of $400,000 to the registrar of voters signify by saying aye. Opposed?
I
That
abstain
amendment
on that
fails.
one, Ed.
I'm sorry?
I abstain on that one.
Thank you. That amendment fails. Next, Ms. Yang.
In business development and tourism, they have advertising dollars of 232,500. I suggest that they bring it back to historical levels of 100,000, which is reducing it by 132,500.
Any comment before we bring that to vote? All in favor of Ms. Yang's amendment?
I a question and comment. Actually, Jared, I'd like you to, just share some of your discussions with tourism and business development around advertising. I know that, their advertising budget's really important in terms of, bringing in new business. So if you could just add a little more for us. You're muted, Jared.
I want to do my due diligence here, and Tom, maybe you can help me out. I want to confirm that that's the case. My recollection was that the dollar amount was lower than.
I thought it was too. So
I recall that we already knocked it down to 100,000, but I want to double check that.
that was my recollection. This
Are
number.
you're looking at the adjustment sheet, Jared?
Let's see, at the adjustment sheet.
I have a comment while you're looking it up. I think we have put responsibility on certain departments to create revenue, and this is one of them. So it's like when we start giving them the foundation and then cut the pipe or cut the flow, then it stalls all the growth that's been built. And I think that's something to consider with this line item. Like you want them to create revenue and be self-sufficient, but you're making that challenging.
Well, is this a nice to have or is this a must to have?
Well, I think the goal is to make them self-sufficient, not it's not like we're giving them a want.
If I remember some of the conversations in the public hearing, people were saying if they're doing such a great job, the businesses should be able to or want to chip in. Certainly, there's enough developers down there that should be helping. And so let's just first, Jared, did you cut the advertising budget or not?
Jared, what I see in the data, again, this is from
Yeah.
last week, not tonight. Across all divisions, the original recommended advertising budget was $154,925,000. You reduced that by $16,489 to a recommended advertising budget of $138,436.
Right, so that was across all agencies. I want to check because this particular line item in ECD is a significant one. That's a significant portion of it, and so I
I see
want to
this in account 5237,
double check.
Jared.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's at 87,000 last week,
Uh,
down from 235,000 in prior year.
Give me a second.
An additional cut of 150,000 would bring it negative.
well, then the cut has already happened if
So
that's
you're
the,
withdrawing this amendment.
well, I want to confirm that that's the case. Can you confirm that, Mr.?
I'm just about there. Just give me a sec. Okay, there. Yeah, I can confirm what exactly what Artie just said, and that it's at
That was Mr. Andrasko, but
$87,332.
Great minds think alike, so I withdraw that discussion. Then can you tell me if you had reduced their level of other professional services, which was 150,000, has that been reduced?
The recommended revised budget is $144,000.
But it was 150.
It was.
Then I would like to propose that is reduced by another $50,000 to make it, call it $100,000 even. So it's other professional services, which don't really know what that is, but it probably can be reduced if it's in the other column.
A lot of
Madam
those,
Mayor,
I can't speak specifically to this, but a lot of those other professional services are contracts with vendors. And so, if any of those, it's something that I would want to double check with the department, but if there are any of those are multi-year contracts that are already in place, or they already have it in place for next year, then I would be concerned about cutting that funding.
Then can we
There are several multi-year contracts that, they've already been signed. They're 3 and 5 year contracts. But I just want to add to, Kendrick's comments a few minutes ago, which is that, we have a department that is tasked with increasing business and, with that business and tourism, bringing people into our businesses and supporting them. So I don't think we want to underfund a department that is increasing revenue.
right? I
would we
appreciate all of that. Ms. Yang's amendment is still on the table.
I guess I would like to have Mr. Schmidt sort of come back to us with an understanding of that. And so I don't know.
Unfortunately, we need to vote on a budget this evening. So we either need to withdraw this or we need to vote on this amendment.
I can read you a description of the impact of that, of what the department sent us. Target advertising info on Instagram, X, Facebook, geofencing, traditional print, radio, and TV, and all content creation is eliminated, resulting in a direct decrease in visitor conversion data. Decreased visitors result in reduced sales for hospitality, restaurants, tourist attractions, and commercial office occupancy. This eliminates support and outreach efforts to retain and grow existing businesses and halts efforts to attract new businesses via business lead elimination. Reduction of awareness for small business resources made available, entrepreneur programs, and community events. So it has a negative impact on the Norwalk brand, where we're experiencing a lot of national attention. And also, I would refer to you to the backup that Sabrina sent earlier, because they do ROI analysis of this type of spending, and that it does drive economic development in the city.
Mr. Jelleret, you have a comment?
Can I just say, I would recommend, and if we could do 50,000 subject to like the mayor said, non-contracts that are multi-year or something. You can maybe phrase it that way, whereas if it's one-off stuff, you should be able to get out of it.
Agree. So
I-
that would,
I'm, yeah, I'm just looking at their actuals for the last few years. They've spent 149.9, 149.9. They're at 141 right now. The vast majority of it with Miranda Marketing. I don't know if that rings a bell with anybody, Mayor Smith.
Yes, yes, indeed. Miranda's a new advertising company that they've been using that is significantly less money than the one that the contract that they had prior. So, you know, they've definitely been saving money around that.
this is really just more advertising.
Well,
So-
Important advertising, though.
having living in this world professionally, your agency helps you with both actual media placement as well as all your creative development, all of your content, etc., that's pushed out into that. So it's not necessarily in media spend. It is the creative and concept development work as well as the strategy work. Do you want to keep your amendment on the table, Ms. Yang?
Yes. To cut,
All in favor of reducing the ECD other professional services budget by $50,000 pending any contractual obligations that can't be exited, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
Now the amendment fails. Next.
I would like to understand in community services, there is a grant line of $1.6 million. I don't recall us ever getting a sense of what those grants were. My recollection is many years ago, the firms or the entities that wanted grants completely came in front of us. So that's a big number. And I would propose reducing that number of grants, given that we don't even know what the grants are.
Comments? Madam
Yeah,
Mayor?
may I ask Chief Daniels, Chief of Staff Daniels, who has, you know, worked with these grants for many years, to comment, please?
Absolutely.
You're muted.
Lamond, you're muted.
Of course. I'm multitasking. So, Ms. Shank, to your point, you're absolutely right. About 7 years ago, this process was done through the BET, and it was moved to the community services, because the community services is the one that can really give a good read on how to do the grant social services, get the best practices, and build relationships. And so I'm actually pulling up, to your point, it's in one line item, and I'm trying to multitask and talk to keep the conversation moving and pick up. So for example, that catch-all line item, 400,000 goes to the Norwalk Senior Center. $500,000 is to the Connecticut Institute for Communities. That's a required local match to unlock federal early childhood education funding. This supports our early childhood learning program through the state. So the city's required to do a $500,000 match. We have a contract with Open Door Shelter. In my opinion, a nominal of $92,000 to support the Open Door Shelter, which is the only shelter in Norwalk that supports our sheltering programs. We also support 95,000 goes to the Mayor Summer Youth Employment Program. So over the summer, helping youth. This does not pay for the whole thing, but is a portion of that pays for the summer youth program. Out of this funding, and these grant items are longstanding.
most of them or were here prior to my tenure, which were actually funded through the BET. So they were, again, the funding line was just carried over to the community services line item about six since my tenure here. And then we do there's $20,000 to the positive directions. That's the substance abuse partnership, which is the regional partnership, which is the city's contribution to that fund. And then let me pull up.
I would like to propose the following. We can let it stand, but Mr. Daniels, I would propose that it goes back to the BET like we have the other grants so that we have a better sense, because that is a very large budget item of $1.6 million. And it would be good to have visibility on exactly what that is, since it did not, I may have missed the meeting, but I don't recall this coming up in our discussions on our budget discussions.
So just to be clear and for the record, Ms. Yang, you're looking for a change in how we manage this line item going forward, but you are not looking to change the line item itself or amend that budget item, correct?
Because we don't have visibility.
Thank you. Understood and acknowledged. Your next line item?
And this may have already been covered, Jared, but is the additional 437,000 in the fire training. Was that addressed in some fashion? Because it's last year it was 100 or 2 years ago it was 152,000. And now we're talking about 437,000. And in all the years prior, it was always about 150,000. So I don't know what changed.
I believe that was already addressed, Ms. Yang. There's a direct line item in there for fire training. The recommended originally was $590,295. The adjustment down was an adjustment down of $432,320 for a revised budget of $157,975.
Fine, great, thank you. Then that is not
Exactly.
applicable.
Mr. Chairman, was there a vote? I'm sorry, was there an action that was just taken without a vote? I just want to make sure I heard it correctly.
The action that was taken, Mario, was simply to look at how the Board of Estimate and Tax gets greater visibility on community service grants going forward. I don't believe that requires a vote. It is simply a to do as we work together with the city to provide visibility into that number at a more granular level as we go forward.
Okay, but there's nothing related to the budget as a result of any action.
Correct. There's
Okay,
no
just want to
change
make
to that
just
actual
want to
alignment.
it's getting late in the night. I just want to make sure I heard
No, I
everything.
am taking copious notes, but thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, can you please tell me where we ended up then in the total for TMP? Because I have here in the budget numbers that you sent me, Jared, the TMP is at $1,637,000 for an increase of 18% or $253,000. I don't know whether you adjusted that down or not.
So the total that we have that was in the original recommended was 2,074,000. And then in the mayor's budget it was $2,074,000 was the total for TMP.
So
That's what I see in Munis.
Yeah.
okay, what is that increase year over year?
It was 9.64%. I do want to put a caveat on this because one of those, and Tom may be able to speak to this, there was a position that was added mid-year that was not included in the 2026 budget, but is in the 2026 budget. So it's in effect, it's already in there, but it wasn't included in the budget. So it's making that percentage increase look higher than it actually is. And that position was approved by the BET. And Tom, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong here.
No, you're exactly right, and that was our or my budget team's oversight. We did not include it in the authorized headcount because that was one of those half-year approvals, and it didn't make it into the full year approval when we did our calculations.
Okay, I would just like to say that pre-COVID, all this traffic stuff was done by DPW. And I think that's the appropriate place because I think they work at cross purposes.
I appreciate the comments, Ms. Yang, but given the hour, can we stick to any amendments you want to make to the budget, please?
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so let's go back then to look at another thing of grants for the historical commission. What is the 300,000 in grants? Then that's up by about 100,000. Is that for all solely for Lockwood Matthews Mansions?
Again, Ms. Yang, is there a specific amendment you want to make to this line item?
I would like to, I'm based upon what it would be, I would want to see it reduced.
Do you have a specific recommendation as to what you are looking to reduce in the Historical Society budget of $300,000?
Well, that's why I asked what it was.
My understanding is that is all Lockwood Matthews. Is that accurate, Tom?
I think so. Part of it might be Lockwood House, which is the one right out here near City Hall as well, but the vast majority of it is Lockwood Mansion.
Okay. All right, let's leave that. I'm now at DPW, and I would just ask that going forward, these very large line items, which are all just put in other, there's a line item of almost 2 million that's in other. There's a line item of almost 4 million in other. And then there's a line item of 3.3 million in other. So I would suspect they're for services, but it would be nice to know how $10 million is calculated rather than being in other.
We did discuss some of that during our departmental budget reviews. I'm sorry I'm getting a little cranky here, Ms. Yang, but again, I would like you to stick to any additional amendments you would like to make.
Some of the other amendments probably would relate to some staffing levels, but we can have that.
We discussed that earlier. Those are
Okay.
not going to come to the floor this evening.
I am looking at other professional services in ops and PW, Public Works, where that budget, it's just other professional services, and it's gone from 32,000 to 132,000.
And so are you making a specific amendment that you would like to make?
Outside of not knowing what that would be, I would look to see it go back to previous level.
So are you making an amendment to reduce that by $100,000?
Yes.
All right, Ann, are you looking at, is there an account number associated with that, Ann, or what are you looking at?
I printed it out. I don't have the whole thing. It's after Fairfield Avenue. So if you continue going down Lockwood Matthews, go down 6 Fairfield Avenue, and you're at Administration R and P.
Oh, okay.
It's just no, I'm sorry, no, that's not it. It is in other professional services, administration, R and P, and it was 12,000, 12,000, 12,000. Then it was 32,000, and then it became 132,000.
Kimberly, you have your hand up. Do you have an insight on this?
Yeah, I just want to tell Tom. Tom, it's in recreation 5258 014 100.
Yeah. I don't remember offhand.
Okay, let me continue going on. And Jared, you may have already covered this. Did you cover a reduction in dues that that Kate went along with other sort of professional services? Because right now the budget for dues is $92,000.
Are you looking at a particular department
It's
or overall?
it's at the bottom. It's called organization membership and dues, organization dues, and it's $92,000.
Tom, you have that the dues.
Which one are you asking, Jared? Sorry, I was looking at Rec and Parks.
Yeah, you know that one line item for I think it's membership organization dues.
I think that's where we pay GFOA and CCM.
It's Westcog and CCM.
Westcog, that's right.
Yeah. So those are two major organizations that the city belongs to. Westcog, it's called Council of Governments. There are several different districts within the state. Norwalk is a big participant in that. And then CCM is Connecticut Council of Municipalities. I don't know if we're mandated to belong to both of those, but we are active members in both of those.
No, that's fine. We should be members in both of those. Okay. I have nothing else.
All right, so the last thing we need to do is get clarity on whether or not you want to bring forward an amendment on the Public Works, other professional services line.
Ken Hughes was on for the longest time. He just dropped. I'm trying to get him.
While we wait for Ken, let me ask the other BET members, since Ms. Yang has made that amendment, are you looking for any additional clarification in order to vote on that amendment? Seeing no additional clarification is required on the amendment to reduce other professional services and public works by $100,000. All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That amendment fails 2-5. We are now done with any amendments to the city operating budget. According to all of my notes, through those amendments, we are going to reduce the operating budget by an additional $110,000, $10,000 on the Harbor Commission grant, $100,000 on the transit grant. However, the $100,000 will not be removed from the transit budget, as it can be funded by an additional sort or an additional grant or source for FY27. So the net down from the departmental perspective is $10,000. With that, we are now at the point where, with those amendments, I will call for a vote on the city side operating budget. So I'm looking for all in favor of the operating budget as presented this evening, minus $110,000. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The city side budget passes, and therefore the full operating budget is now approved at 4% on the Board of Education side. And I don't have the percentage in front of me on the city side, forgive me.
I'll have it in 30 seconds, Ed.
Thank you. As you look to pull those numbers, I want to thank the departments. I want to thank the Board of Education. I want to thank the mayor. I want to thank Jared and Tom. I want to thank the BET members. This has not been an enjoyable budget season for anyone. I realize that there are a number of people on the Board of Education side who are devastated by tonight's decisions. However, as we make these decisions, we have to look at the totality of the city. We have to look at the fact that we have an opportunity to continue to pressure our state representatives for additional funding for our Board of Education and for our children. And in balancing all of those things, I stand by the decision we made today. Is it ideal? No. Do we need more funding? Yes. Do we need to put that on the back of the taxpayer? No. We need to do a better job together of pressuring the other sources of funding that become available to us. There is always someone who seems willing to ride in at the last moment as a white knight. We need to get that in front of us, not in these last moment situations. So, Tom, hopefully I've given you enough time to calculate the final budget.
You have on the city's, on the Board of Education side, as you said, 4% equates to 257,082,548. On the city side, that additional $110,000 cut equates to 7.92%, or 221,168,403. That comes out to a blended rate of 5.78%, or 478,250,950. I'm sorry, 478,250,952. Does anybody need those repeated? I
No.
will send out a quick screenshot shortly with in an email.
Is there anything else we need to address this evening, Tom? Or now you just need to put that in a letter that I, as the BET chair, need to sign?
Yeah, and then that will go to the city council.
Okay.
Can I just make one comment? Could I ask Mr. Schmidt and Mr. Ellis at our next meeting to please report on what that means relative to our fund balance ratio?
Yes.
Thank you.
Artie, I believe you have a question or a comment?
I have a motion to adjourn.
We are moved to adjourn. Thank you all very much, everyone, for what's left of the evening. Have a good one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night.